The moment I rounded the corner of the funeral procession, I froze. There it was. Our father's business, the warehouse I'd run with sweat and blood for years, and right across the entrance, a bright yellow sold sign swinging in the wind. Mark stood beneath it, hands casually in his pockets, smirking like this was just another joke at my expense. My chest tightened, and for a heartbeat I couldn't breathe. I had just buried Dad, and my brother, my own blood, had stolen everything while I was inside saying goodbye. The words spilled out before I could stop them. How could you? He shrugged. It's done, Evan. Signed and sealed this morning. That's when it hit me. The betrayal was complete. My brother sold our father's business while I was at his funeral. I stood there staring at that yellow sign like it was written in a language I couldn't understand. The wind made it swing back and forth, the metal chains scraping against the post with a sound that cut through everything. Behind me, I could still hear people leaving the cemetery, their shoes crunching on gravel, their voices low and respectful. They were talking about Dad, about his legacy, about what a good man he was. And here was Mark, dismantling that legacy before the dirt had even settled on Dad's grave. You're joking, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Tell me you're joking, Mark. He tilted his head, that same smug expression he'd worn since we were kids. Why would I joke about this? The deal's been in the works for weeks. The buyer wanted to close today. Today, I felt my hands curl into fists. You sold Dad's company on the day of his funeral? Mark shrugged again, like he was discussing the weather. Business doesn't stop for grief, Evan. You should know that. I wanted to hit him. God, I wanted to knock that smirk right off his face. But I didn't. Because even through the rage and the shock, I knew one thing. Mark wanted me to lose control. He wanted me to explode so he could play the victim. So I stood there, breathing hard, staring at my brother like I was seeing him for the first time. The funeral had been 3 hours earlier. 3 hours since we'd lowered Dad into the ground while the priest spoke about faith and eternal rest. I'd stood at the edge of the grave, holding a single red rose, remembering the last thing Dad said to me. It was 2 days before he died. I'd been sitting by his hospital bed, holding his hand while machines beeped softly around us. His breathing was shallow, his skin pale and paper-thin, but his eyes were still sharp, still focused on me. Evan, he'd whispered, his voice rough. You've always been the strong one, the one who understands this business. I'd squeezed his hand. Don't talk like that, Dad. You're going to pull through. He'd smiled just a little. We both know that's not true. He paused, gathering strength. I'm proud of you, son. You kept this company alive when I couldn't. Dad, listen. His grip tightened. Mark doesn't have your heart, but he's still your brother. Take care of him. Those were almost his last words to me. Take care of him. Standing at the warehouse now, watching Mark celebrate his betrayal, those words felt like a knife in my chest. How was I supposed to take care of someone who'd just stabbed me in the back? The pieces started falling into place as I stood there. Over the past few months, strange things had been happening at the company. Client emails that never reached me. Board meetings scheduled without my knowledge. Proposals I'd never seen being sent out under my name. I thought it was just chaos. Dad was dying, and everyone was scrambling to keep things running. I figured wires were getting crossed, communication was breaking down, normal stuff during a crisis. But it wasn't normal. It was Mark. 2 months ago, our biggest client, Henderson Manufacturing, had called me directly. Evan, what's going on with your pricing? The proposal we got was 20% higher than last year. I'd pulled up the file, confused. That's not right. Let me check. When I'd looked at the proposal, my signature was at the bottom, but I'd never seen it before. The pricing was deliberately inflated, designed to make Henderson walk away. And they almost did, until I'd called them back personally and fixed it. I'd confronted Mark about it. He'd shrugged it off. Must be an admin error. You know how things have been lately. Now I knew better. Mark had been systematically undermining me, making me look incompetent to the board and to our clients, building a case that I couldn't handle the company, setting up his move. I walked toward the warehouse, my shoes echoing on the concrete. Mark didn't move from his spot under the sign. He just watched me approach, that infuriating smirk still plastered on his face. We need to talk, I said when I reached him. Inside. Nothing to talk about, Evan. It's done. How? I demanded. How did you even have the authority to sell? I'm COO. Dad never gave you. Medical power of attorney, Mark interrupted, pulling a folded document from his jacket pocket. Dad signed it 6 months ago. Gave me full authority over all business decisions if he became incapacitated. I snatched the paper from his hand, scanning it quickly. There it was, Dad's signature at the bottom, dated last November, right around the time his treatment started getting aggressive. This doesn't give you the right to sell, I said. This was for medical decisions, for... Read Section 4, little brother. Mark's voice was cold now, the smugness replaced by something harder. It extends to all business and financial decisions. Dad knew what he was signing. My vision blurred for a moment. Dad had signed this? Had given Mark this kind of power? There's more I'm hiding, Mark added, almost casually, but you'll figure it out eventually. Or maybe you won't. I pushed past Mark and walked into the warehouse. The familiar smell hit me immediately. Motor oil, metal, sawdust. The smell of 15 years of my life. The main floor was quiet. Most employees had gone home early for the funeral, but a few were there, standing in small groups, talking in hushed voices. When they saw me, their faces shifted. Some looked relieved, others looked afraid. James, our floor manager, approached me cautiously. Evan, is it true? Did Mark really? Yeah, I said quietly. He sold it. James's face went pale. What happens to us, to our jobs? I don't know yet. I looked around at the machines, the inventory, the systems I'd spent years building. But I'm going to figure it out. I spent the next hour walking through the facility, checking everything. The equipment was still here. The inventory hadn't moved. Most of the client contracts were still active, filed in my office where I'd left them. Mark had sold the building and the business name, but he hadn't sold everything. Not yet. As I was leaving, Sarah from accounting pulled me aside. Her voice was barely a whisper. Evan, there's something you need to know. Mark promised he'd cut you out completely, but there's a ledger, an old one Dad kept. It's not in the system. It's in his desk, hidden. That night, I sat alone in Dad's office. The room still smelled like his cigars, even though he hadn't smoked in years. His desk was exactly as he'd left it, papers stacked neatly, a photo of Mom on the corner, a coffee mug that said World's Best Boss that I'd given him when I was 12. I pulled out my notebook and started writing. Not emotions, not anger, facts, evidence, timeline. November, Dad signs POA, Mark gains control. December, February, strange incidents begin. Emails redirected, proposals altered. March, Henderson Manufacturing nearly cancels. I save the contract personally. April, Dad's condition worsens. Board meetings happen without me. May, Dad dies. Mark sells the business the same day. I made a list of allies. Employees who were loyal to me, not Mark. Clients who trusted me personally. Suppliers who knew my work ethic. Then I made a list of leverage. Assets Mark couldn't touch. Contracts tied to my name. Relationships that couldn't be transferred with a sale. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened the message. We're on your side, but hurry. JR. Jerry Randolph. Our oldest supplier, the one who'd worked with Dad since the beginning. The one who never trusted Mark. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I smiled. For the first time since seeing that yellow sign, I smiled. Mark thought he'd won, but the game was just starting. The next morning, I started making calls. Not angry calls, not desperate calls. Calm, professional, strategic calls. First was Henderson Manufacturing. Tom, it's Evan. I need to talk to you about the transition. Tom Henderson's voice was cautious. Evan, I heard about the sale. I'm sorry about your dad, by the way. Thank you. Listen, I want to make sure all our existing contracts are honored properly. There might be some confusion during the ownership change. Confusion? Tom's voice sharpened. What kind of confusion? Just want to make sure pricing and delivery schedules stay consistent. You know how these transitions go. There was a pause. Evan, are you still going to be involved? That's being determined, but I want to make sure you're taken care of regardless. I appreciate that. Another pause. Between you and me, Evan, I never dealt with Mark. Everything we did was through you. If that changes, I might need to reconsider our contracts. I felt a spark of hope. I understand, Tom. Let's stay in touch. I made 8 more calls that morning. Every major client, every long-term relationship. Not asking for anything. Just checking in. Just maintaining relationships. By noon, I had 3 clients expressing concern about the sale. By evening, one had sent a formal letter requesting clarification on contract terms before continuing payments. Mark was going to notice, but by then, it would be too late. Sarah met me outside a coffee shop the next day. She looked nervous, glancing over her shoulder like Mark might appear any second. "I found something," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "These are emails from Mark to the buyer. He was negotiating for 3 months." I opened the folder. The first email was dated February 14th. "I can offer a 15% discount on the initial purchase price if we close quickly. My brother doesn't need to know the details." My jaw clenched. Mark had been planning this since February. While Dad was dying, while I was spending every spare moment at the hospital. The second email was worse. "Evans's compensation can be restructured or eliminated. He's been making mistakes lately. The board will support the transition." Lies. All lies. But lies that had clearly worked. The third email made my blood run cold. "Once the sale is complete, I'll handle all employee transitions. Several positions will be redundant." "Sarah," I said quietly, "how many people does Mark plan to fire?" Her voice shook. "Based on these emails, about 40% of staff." 40%. Half the people who'd worked with Dad for years. Half the team that had built this company. "There's one more thing," Sarah added. "An invoice. It's missing from the records, but Mark referenced it in an email. Payment to someone called MC Consulting. $50,000. For what? I don't know, but it's not in any official records." Jerry Randolph ran a steel supply company 3 towns over. He'd been Dad's first major supplier, back when the business was just Dad and 2 employees working out of a garage. I drove out to see him. His office was small, cluttered, exactly how I remembered it. "Evan," he said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was firm, his eyes sharp despite his 70 years. "I'm sorry about your father. He was a good man." "Thank you, Jerry. Sit down." He gestured to a worn leather chair. "Tell me what's going on." I told him everything. The sale, Mark's betrayal, the emails, the missing invoice. Jerry listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back and sighed. "I never trusted Mark," he said bluntly. "Your father knew it too. That's why he never put Mark in charge of supplier relationships." "I need your help," I said. "Name it." "Mark's going to need steel for the contracts he inherited. I need you to delay shipments, find quality issues, anything that slows him down without breaking any laws." Jerry smiled slowly. "You know, Evan, I've been thinking about updating my quality control processes. Might take a few weeks to certify new batches. Might cause some delays in fulfilling orders," I added. "Might indeed." Jerry's smile widened. "Consider it done." 2 days later, Mark called me. His voice was tight with frustration. "Did you do something to Jerry Randolph?" "I don't know what you're talking about. He's holding up our steel shipments, says there's a quality issue." "Maybe there is a quality issue. Evan, I'm not involved anymore, remember? You sold the company." I hung up. It was a small victory, but it felt good. I spent the next 2 weeks documenting everything. Every email Mark sent, every contract he modified, every promise he made to the buyer that he couldn't keep. I didn't act impulsively. I didn't confront him. I just watched and recorded and built my case piece by piece. Mark noticed something was wrong. I saw it in the way he looked at me during the few times we crossed paths. Suspicious, uncertain. He hired someone, a consultant named David Reeves, supposed to help with the transition. But I knew better. Mark was trying to figure out what I was doing. One afternoon, David approached me in the parking lot. "Evan, got a minute?" "Sure." "Mark mentioned you might be resistant to the changes. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page." I gave him my best neutral smile. "I'm not resistant. I'm just making sure our clients are taken care of." "Right." David didn't look convinced. "Well, if you need anything during this transition, let me know." "I will." That night, I got an email from Tom Henderson. "Evan, we received revised contract terms from Mark. Pricing is up 18% and delivery windows are longer. This isn't what we agreed to. Call me." I called him immediately. "Tom, I don't know anything about revised terms." "Then who approved this?" "Mark, apparently, but he doesn't have the authority to change our existing contracts." "Can you fix this?" "I'm working on it." It was starting. Mark's house of cards was beginning to shake. I scheduled a meeting with the buyer. His name was Richard Chen, owner of a manufacturing conglomerate. We met at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant downtown. Mr. Chen, thank you for meeting with me. He nodded, studying me carefully. You're Evan, the COO. Former COO, I suppose. Mark speaks highly of himself, Richard said carefully. He doesn't mention you much. I'm sure he doesn't. I pulled out a folder. Mr. Chen, I want to be transparent with you. There are some discrepancies in the information Mark provided during the sale. Richard's expression didn't change. What kind of discrepancies? Client contracts that were misrepresented, costs that were understated, employee compensation that wasn't accurately disclosed. I slid the folder across the table. Richard opened it, reading in silence. After 5 minutes, he looked up. Where did you get this information? I've been with this company for 15 years. I know every contract, every commitment, every relationship. And you're sharing this with me because? Because I believe in doing business honestly, and because you deserve to know what you actually purchased. Richard closed the folder slowly. I'll need to verify this information. I understand. If this is accurate, he paused. I may need to reconsider elements of this purchase. I kept my expression neutral. That's your decision, Mr. Chen. But inside, I was smiling. 3 days later, I secured my first independent client, Morrison Industries, a mid-sized manufacturer I'd worked with for years. The owner, Patricia Morrison, called me directly. Evan, I heard about what happened. I'm sorry. Thank you, Patricia. Listen, I'm not comfortable working with Mark. I've always dealt with you, so I want to offer you a contract personally. What kind of contract? Consulting. You help us with our supply chain like you always have, but you work for us, not for Mark's company. It was small, just $50,000 for 6 months. But it was mine, my own client, my own contract. I'll send the paperwork today, Patricia said. That evening, Mark called. His voice was different, friendly, but with an edge. Evan, I heard you're doing some consulting work. News travels fast. Listen, little brother, I get it, you're upset. But don't think you can play hero here. The sale is done, the company is mine. You can't change that. I'm not trying to change anything, Mark. I'm just moving forward with my life. Right. He didn't sound convinced. Just remember, you signed a non-compete when you became COO. I remember, and I'm not competing, I'm consulting. Better stay that way. After he hung up, I sat back and smiled. Mark was worried. Good, he should be. Sarah found the ledger in Dad's desk, hidden in a false bottom drawer. It was old, leather-bound, filled with Dad's neat handwriting. I sat in Dad's office reading through pages of transactions from the past 5 years. Most were normal. Supply purchases, client payments, employee bonuses. But starting 2 years ago, a pattern emerged. Monthly payments of $5,000 to MC Consulting. $60,000 a year. For 2 years. $120,000 total. There were no invoices, no contracts, no description of services provided, just payments like clockwork on the 15th of every month. MC Consulting. I pulled out my phone and searched. No business by that name in our state. No website. No public records. Then I remembered something. Mark's middle name was Christopher. MC, Mark Christopher. My hands started shaking. Had Mark been stealing from Dad? For years? While Dad was dying, I called Sarah. Can you check Dad's personal accounts? See if there were any transfers to Mark around the same dates as these consulting payments? I'll need access to his banking records. I have his passwords. I'll send them to you. 2 hours later, Sarah called back. Evan, every MC Consulting payment was immediately transferred to Mark's personal account. I felt sick. Dad knew? I don't think so. The payments were coded as business expenses. They looked legitimate in the books. How did Mark even get approval? He had POA. He could authorize payments. Mark hadn't just sold the company. He'd been robbing it blind, and Dad never knew. The call came from an unknown number at 8 p.m. Is this Evan? Yes. Who's this? My name is Linda Chen. Richard Chen's daughter. I work in his accounting department. I sat up straighter. How can I help you? I can't help you on the phone. Can we meet tomorrow morning? We met at the same restaurant. Linda was in her 30s, sharp-eyed, carrying a laptop bag. Mr. Evan, I reviewed the information you gave my father. I also did some additional digging. She opened her laptop. Mark misrepresented several key elements of the sale. Such as? He claimed the company had 12 major clients with long-term contracts. But 4 of those contracts are actually tied to you personally, not the company. If you leave, those clients can terminate without penalty. I didn't say anything. I'd structured those contracts that way deliberately, years ago. Protection, in case something ever went wrong. There's more, Linda continued. Mark claimed average monthly revenue of $500,000, but looking at the actual books, it's closer to $350,000. He inflated the numbers. Can you prove that? She turned the laptop toward me. This is the data he submitted. This is the actual data from your accounting software. The discrepancy is clear. What does your father plan to do? He's furious. He's considering legal action against Mark for misrepresentation. At minimum, he wants to renegotiate the purchase price. And at maximum? Linda smiled slightly. At maximum, he wants to rescind the sale entirely. Mark called an all-hands meeting 2 days later. Every employee packed into the warehouse floor. Mark stood on a platform, looking confident and relaxed. I know there's been a lot of uncertainty, he began. Change is always difficult. But I want to assure you that under my leadership, this company will reach new heights. Some employees clapped politely. Most just watched silently. We have exciting contracts in the pipeline, new opportunities, better margins. Mark's voice rose. Some people might tell you the old ways were better, but progress requires change. Progress requires vision. He was looking at me when he said it. I kept my expression neutral. I'm also pleased to announce that we've secured a major new contract with Riverside Manufacturing. $5 million over 3 years, the largest deal in company history. Now people did clap. $5 million was huge. Mark was grinning. But I knew something Mark didn't. Riverside Manufacturing had terrible credit. They'd filed for bankruptcy protection twice in the last 5 years. Giving them a 3-year contract without securing payment up front was financial suicide. I'd turned down their business personally last year. But Mark, in his arrogance, had taken it. It was the kind of mistake that could cost him everything. I registered a new business the following week. Evans Industrial Consulting. Small operation, just me and a rented office space. But it was mine. 3 former clients signed on immediately. Small contracts, but steady income. Enough to prove the concept worked. Patricia Morrison referred me to 2 of her competitors. Both signed consulting agreements within a week. I wasn't competing directly with Mark's company. I was offering specialized services. Supply, chain optimization, quality control consulting, efficiency analysis. Things Mark's company did, but not as well. When Mark heard about it, he showed up at my new office unannounced. Nice place, he said, looking around at the bare walls and secondhand furniture. Real step up from the warehouse. What do you want, Mark? Just checking on my little brother. Making sure you're not doing anything you shouldn't. I'm running a legitimate business, right? He picked up a coffee mug from my desk, examined it, put it down. Evan, you realize you can't win this, right? The company is sold. It's done. Let it go. I have let it go. This is my new path. Mark laughed. Let him try, he said, almost to himself. Let him try. After he left, I made a note in my phone. Mark's arrogance was his weakness. He genuinely believed I couldn't touch him. That belief was going to destroy him. Jerry Randolph called me 3 weeks after our meeting. Evan, something interesting just happened. What's that? I did some checking on this Richard Chen fellow, the one who bought your father's company. And he's overextended, bought 3 companies in the last 18 months, all with significant debt financing. His credit line is maxed out. He can't afford the purchase? Oh, he can't afford it. Barely. But if anything goes wrong, if revenue drops, if a major client leaves, if there's any kind of hiccup, he's going to have serious cash flow problems. I leaned back in my chair. How serious? Serious enough that his lenders might call in some loans, force him to liquidate assets, like the company he just bought from Mark. Exactly like that. Jerry, you're a genius. Just know my way around a balance sheet. He paused. Evan, if Chen's company goes under, that business could go to auction. Someone could buy it back. Someone like me? Someone exactly like you. I met with Richard Chen again. This time his lawyer was present. Mr. Evan, the lawyer began, my client has discovered significant discrepancies in the information provided by Mark during the sale process. I'm aware, I said. Richard spoke up. You told me there were issues. You were right. Mark misrepresented client relationships, revenue figures, and contract terms. Legally, this constitutes fraud. What are you going to do? I'm pursuing legal action against Mark personally. I'm also demanding a 50% reduction in the purchase price, or I'll rescind the sale entirely. I kept my expression neutral, but my heart was racing. That's your right. There's something else, Richard continued. You structured several contracts to be tied to you personally. I'd like to offer you a position in the company. COO, same as before, 20% equity stake. It was a good offer. Maybe even a great offer. I'd get my job back, get partial ownership, get revenge on Mark. But it wasn't enough. Thank you, Mr. Chen, but I'm going to decline. Richard looked surprised. May I ask why? Because this company was my father's dream. And if it's going to be anyone's, it should be mine. Richard studied me for a long moment, then he nodded slowly. I understand. If circumstances change, the offer stands. Mark's problems were multiplying faster than he could handle them. The Riverside manufacturing contract he'd been so proud of? They missed their first payment, then their second. By the third month, they filed for bankruptcy protection again, leaving Mark holding a $3 million bag. The quality issues with Jerry's steel shipments, they'd caused delays in fulfilling contracts with two major clients. Both clients were threatening to terminate and demand refunds. Richard Chen's lawsuit, it was progressing through the courts, tying up company assets and damaging Mark's reputation. And Mark, in his desperation, started making more mistakes. He fired 3 senior employees without cause. They hired lawyers. He tried to cut supplier costs by switching to cheaper materials. Quality dropped. Clients complained. He pushed employees to work longer hours without overtime pay. Someone reported him to the labor board. I didn't cause these problems. Mark caused them himself. But I watched carefully, documenting everything. One afternoon, James from the warehouse called me. Evan, Mark's asking people to spy on you, wants to know who you're meeting with, what contracts you're signing. And? I told him I'd think about it, but I wanted you to know. Thanks, James. Do me a favor? What? Tell him you'll do it, then feed him false information. James laughed. I like the way you think. The letter came from Richard Chen's lawyer. Due to material misrepresentation and breach of contract, Chen Industries is exercising its right to rescind the purchase of Morrison Industrial Supply. All assets will revert to the original owner, Mark Morrison, pending resolution of legal claims and financial adjustments. The sale was falling apart. Mark called me 30 minutes after receiving his copy. His voice was panicked, nothing like the confident tone he'd used for months. Evan, we need to talk. About what? Don't play stupid. Chen is pulling out. The whole deal is collapsing. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate? Mark's voice rose. Evan, this is a disaster. If this sale falls through, the company won't survive. The debt Chen took on, the obligations I signed, it'll bury us. It'll bury you, I corrected. I'm not part of the company anymore, remember? You did this. You poisoned Chen against me. I told him the truth, Mark. There's a difference. I need your help. I almost laughed. You need my help? After you sold our father's company while I was at his funeral? After you stole money from Dad for 2 years? After you tried to destroy my reputation? Silence on the other end. I found the ledger, Mark. MC Consulting. I know what you did. More silence. Then, that wasn't stealing. I deserved that money. Dad didn't think so. That's why you hid it. Evan, please, we can fix this. We're brothers. No, Mark, we're not. Not anymore. The pieces came together over the next month. Jerry's steel shipment stayed delayed. Quality issues, he kept saying. Nothing illegal. Just problems. My former supplier contacts started quietly refusing to work with Mark. Payment issues, they claimed. Credit concerns. Employees, seeing the writing on the wall, started jumping ship. 3 resigned in 1 week, then 5, then 8. Patricia Morrison and my other consulting clients referred me to their networks. My little consulting business was growing faster than I'd anticipated. And most importantly, Mark's remaining clients started asking questions. When they discovered the truth about his misrepresentations, several terminated their contracts. Mark tried to fight back. He hired lawyers. He threatened employees. He called in favors. But the tide had turned. Everyone could see it. The company was dying, and Mark couldn't stop the bleeding. One evening, James called me. Evan, you should know. Mark's been drinking at the office, yelling at people. He's falling apart. How bad? Bad. I think he knows it's over. Keep me updated. Will do, Evan? Yeah? We're all rooting for you. You know that, right? Thanks, James. That means a lot. Sarah found it buried in a cloud storage account Mark thought was private. A signed document, dated 3 weeks before Dad died. A document transferring 51% of company ownership to Mark, allegedly signed by Dad. But the signature was wrong. I'd seen Dad's signature thousands of times. This one was close, but not perfect. The R in our last name curved too far. The date was wobbly. Sarah, this is forged. I know. I compared it to Dad's other signatures. It doesn't match. Can we prove it? We can try. But Evan, if this document is fake, Mark committed fraud. Real fraud, the kind that gets you prison time. I stared at the document for a long time. Mark hadn't just stolen the company. He'd forged Dad's signature to do it. He'd committed a crime, betting I'd never find out. Sarah, make 3 copies. 1 for me, 1 for Richard Chen's lawyer, and 1 for the police. The police? Evan, are you sure? He crossed a line. This isn't business anymore. This is criminal. The next day, I walked into the police station and filed a formal complaint for forgery and fraud. The detective who took my statement looked at the documents carefully. This is serious, Mr. Morrison. If proven, your brother could face significant jail time. I understand. Do you want to proceed? I thought about Dad. About his last words. Take care of him. Then I thought about Mark standing under that yellow sign, smirking while I buried our father. Yes, I said. I want to proceed. The collapse came quickly after that. Richard Chen's lawyers submitted the forged document as additional evidence of Mark's fraud. The judge ordered an immediate audit of all company records. The audit revealed everything. The stolen MC consulting payments, the inflated revenue figures, the forged ownership transfer, years of manipulation and deception. Chen's company officially rescinded the sale. Mark was ordered to return all payment received, plus damages. But Mark didn't have the money. He'd already spent it. The debt he'd taken on during the sale, the lifestyle he'd funded, the expenses he'd hidden, it was all gone. The company went into receivership. A court-appointed trustee took control of all assets while the legal mess got sorted out. Mark tried to call me. I didn't answer. He showed up at my office. I had security escort him out. He sent emails, texts, voicemails, all of them desperate, all of them ignored. 3 weeks after the receivership began, the trustee announced the company would be sold at auction to pay off debts and legal claims. And I, with Patricia Morrison and Jerry Randolph as my partners, submitted a bid. We offered fair market value, not inflated like Mark had paid, not desperate like Chen had attempted, just honest, sustainable, realistic value. 2 other companies bid against us, but neither had our insider knowledge. Neither had the client relationships we'd rebuilt. Neither had the employee loyalty we'd earned. When the auction ended, we'd won. Morrison Industrial Supply was mine again. Mark's fall was complete. The criminal investigation led to charges: fraud, forgery, embezzlement. His lawyer negotiated a plea deal: 5 years probation, full restitution of stolen funds, permanent ban from serving as a corporate officer. He lost everything. His reputation, his money, his freedom to work in the industry he'd tried to steal. The employees who'd left started calling, asking if they could come back. I hired most of them. The ones who'd stayed loyal, who'd helped me, I promoted. James became operations director. Sarah became CFO. Jerry Randolph joined the board as an advisor. I stood in Dad's office, my office now, looking at the photo of Mom that Dad had kept on his desk. I'd added a photo of Dad beside it, both of them watching over me. I got it back, Dad, I said quietly. I got your dream back. I thought about his last words. Take care of him. I had taken care of Mark. Just not the way Dad probably meant. I'd let Mark face the consequences of his choices. I'd let justice do its work. And maybe in some strange way, that was taking care of him. Teaching him the lesson he'd never learned. The company was thriving again. Clients were returning. New contracts were being signed. The warehouse hummed with activity. And Mark was working at a car wash in another state, trying to rebuild a life he'd destroyed through greed and betrayal. 5 years later, I stood at Dad's grave with a single red rose. The company's doing well, I told him. Better than before. We expanded into 3 new states. Revenue's up 40%, employees are happy. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere, a bird was singing. Mark called last month, first time in years, said he was sorry, really sorry. I paused. I told him I forgave him. I'm not sure I meant it, but I said it anyway. I placed the rose on the headstone. You taught me a lot, Dad. How to work hard, how to treat people fairly, how to build something that lasts. I smiled. Mark taught me something too. He taught me that intelligence and patience beat greed and arrogance every single time. I turned to leave, then stopped. I did take care of him, Dad, just not the way you asked. I let him learn his lesson the hard way. I let him face what he'd done. And maybe that was the only way he could change. As I walked back to my car, I thought about that yellow sold sign swinging in the wind. The moment everything broke. The moment I realized I'd either let Mark destroy me, or I'd save myself. I'd chosen to save myself, and in doing so, I'd save Dad's legacy. The business wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Built on honesty, hard work, and genuine relationships. Everything Dad believed in. Mark had tried to steal that. But you can't steal what's built on truth. Justice hadn't been loud or dramatic. It had been quiet, methodical, and absolutely certain. And it had won. Thank you for staying with me to the end. If it resonated with you, please like the video so it reaches more people. Share it with someone who might need it, and leave a comment with your thoughts or how you might have handled the situation. Most importantly, subscribe so you do not miss the next story. Thanks again for watching.